September 2020's Cancer Book Club. As you know, we on the Cancer Book Club interview authors of cancer relevant books, the majority of which are patients' stories, which we find particularly inspiring. And today's, we're very pleased to have with us Gogs Gagnon, who his book is with respect to his own journey with prostate cancer. And I'm hoping, so welcome Gogs, thanks for joining us. We're really pleased.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's my honor to be here.
Yes, so I read your book and I was impressed with, how you describe kind of making it through a really significant ordeal, and you break it down into sort of digestible bits and pieces along the journey line for people anticipating it. And I guess one of the things that is true of prostate cancer is that there's many possible different paths. There's radiation, surgery, hormone therapy, etc. And so it was your path was your path, and you describe that particular path. But did you find it challenging to write a book about a treatment journey where there are a variety of possible ways forward?
Oh, absolutely. When I was first diagnosed, I certainly wasn't planning on writing a book. As a matter of fact, it was quite devastating, and I really shut down, and I overreacted. Really, I thought my life was over, and I basically wanted to curl up in a ball and not talk about it. I was very lucky that my wife's very supportive, and she was able to be with me and help encourage me to open up. And so I started to talk to her, and I realized that it was quite helpful to speak about it. So then what had happened is I decided that I was just going to write a journal, basically a personal, private journal. I wasn't even going to share it with anyone, just my doctor's appointments and my test results and how I was feeling at the time. And then over time, what happened was I had friends, coworkers who gave me a call, and they asked me how I was doing, and I thought, well, maybe I'll share, a little bit of my private journals with them, and it kind of just grew from there. And they gave me positive feedback and wanted me to write more, and so then I decided, well, maybe I should write a book. But when I said that, I had no idea how much of an effort that was going to be. 2 years later, still writing. But it was extremely therapeutic to write it, and it was quite an emotional release. So I was able to reprocess what had happened. I was able to think about it, and I wanted to make sure that if I was going to write a book, it had to be I couldn't censor anything. It had to be a complete experience, and I wanted to make sure that I was very medically accurate. And because I was able to reflect, I put in a lot of what I would do differently, because if I did have to do this over again, I certainly would do a lot of things differently.
Yes,
First
I
didn't.
That aspect of the book, I really liked it when you said, afterwards I learned about this approach, and I wished I'd thought of that. And
I think that was one of the most powerful pieces of the book, actually, was that you're always dealing with this timeline, and you're forced to make decisions, and yet you're seeking information. Do you have enough information? How do you know if you have enough? It's almost an impossible conundrum from a patient's perspective. And I think we've all run into this, that the medical community is so siloed that it falls on us to investigate all these different silos and come up with a decision. And I was overwhelmed at the number of options that you faced.
Absolutely. It's very overwhelming. Like, after I was diagnosed with the cancer, I was in the doctor's office, and he told me I had cancer. And as soon as I heard that word cancer, I really couldn't process anymore. And I'm sure he kept on talking, and I just couldn't focus on it. And then at the end of the meeting, I guess, he handed me a big stack of information, and he said, "Okay, there's all these things you need to read," and it's just it was just too much. It took a long time to realize that. I only realized afterwards. Like, when I was told I had cancer, I didn't realize I was in shock, and panicking and not making rational decisions and wanting to move ahead with the procedure not even knowing there was different options available. So I realize now that anyone who's diagnosed with cancer probably would be in this state of shock, and most likely they'll need time just to recover, just from hearing that word before they able to process anymore, especially make decisions on life-altering treatments. While you're in this shock state is not a.
It's interesting. You and I fall on the same side of the equation. I want information. Throw the information at me. I can make it. I will find a way to make a decision. But a lot of people don't want any information.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How does one reconcile these two points of view? It's one that's really hard for me.
Mm-hmm. I after I opened up and decided I was going to write, I became obsessed and I started reading everything. And right now I probably read at least 50 different books on prostate cancer, and I probably know way more than I need to know. But I was just obsessed. I read just so much. But what I found though was, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't know anything. I didn't even really. I knew I had prostate, but I didn't even know anything about it. But what I realized was, because I didn't know anything, I was very scared, because it was fear of the unknown. But as I learned more and more I learned about it, the more I felt empowered, and the more I felt that I wasn't so scared anymore.
Do you think that one of the things I think everybody faces with cancer is a really visceral need for connection with others? As your book evolved, that need for connection came up again and again, and I thought it became more powerful. What would you tell people facing something like this, vis-a-vis connection?
Well, connection is so important, and I didn't realize at the time that I needed it, because I maybe growing up as a man, you're kind of independent and you don't need help, and asking for help is a sign of weakness, and I can do this on my own type of stand on my own 2 feet kind of thing. But I certainly would recommend that even before, like if I had to do this over again, as soon as I was diagnosed, after I had a little bit of time to process that, I would join a support group, even before reading books and searching the internet, and just reach out to others who have gone before me, and just to make that connection, to help realize that I'm not the only one in this position, and there's a team of support available. I didn't join a support group until later, much later, but I certainly would have, right from the get-go, even before deciding on treatment.
Your support group, did you connect with them during treatment?
No, I actually connected after my treatment was over, and what I learned was most men do the same. They want to be independent, I guess, and they make their decision, and then they have their treatment, whatever it may be, and then they join a support group, which, ideally, in my opinion, I think it would be best to make that connection first, just so that I really want men, anyone really, to make the best possible informed decision as possible before they move forward. And the only way to make that best informed decision is to be able to do your homework. And it takes a lot of time, and you have to avoid the knee-jerk reaction of wanting to rush into treatment. If you have time, it's all on your own specific case. But normally, prostate cancer, depending on your stage, you have a bit of time to decide. And so that's the one thing that I would certainly recommend, is joining a support group much sooner, to learn to make that connection, because it is nice to know that you're not alone in this.
How many years are you out since your treatment?
I'm exactly 39 months.
Okay.
After I chose surgery, and basically after surgery, your prostate is removed, and there's this blood test called PSA blood test that measures a protein called PSA that's in your bloodstream, and it's produced by the prostate. It's only produced by the prostate. So if your prostate's removed successfully and completely, there should be no more PSA in your bloodstream. So I have regular tests every 3 months, but now that I've reached the 3 years, it's every 6 months now. I don't really like waiting so long because the standard practice is after 5 years, you get your PSA only once a year. And that kind of scares me a little bit because I don't know, once a year, well, you just have to learn to live with it, I guess.
No,
But
no, the scanxiety part of this and being tied to these test results that jerk your emotions all over the place. I mean, personally, I start freaking out 2 weeks before a scan. I mean, I just on the ceiling. It's just nerve wracking, and it goes on for years.
Yes, yeah. I have friends that are 15, 20 years out, and they still get anxious when it's time for their test. And we do have some friends. I have a friend actually who passed away last year of prostate cancer. He was clear for 10 years after his treatment, and he had recurrence 10 years later, and he went back for treatment, and about a year after his treatment, he passed. So it's always, it's always on your mind. I know that might be low odds maybe, but it's still on your mind. And
Has the experience changed your life in any particular way?
Well, I think so. I'm certainly more aware of my eating. I've struggled with weight my whole life. When I grew up, my mom was a baker, and she was always making cakes and cookies, and I just ate way more than I really should have, and that carried on into my adult life. And I never really thought much about it because I was healthy, or I appeared to be healthy anyway. I thought I was healthy, and I didn't have any real health issues. And when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, it really kind of, whoa, I guess I'm not invincible and eat whatever I want. So that's on my mind so I have changed my eating. I still struggle with it, but yes. And also just being more aware of myself, being in the moment more, and realizing that anything can happen at any time.
I think that's a big one for everybody, that moment. I think as I look back, I think you go through periods of time where everything is so intense and clear. Maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a hummingbird, whatever it is, it's just overwhelming in its beauty, and you appreciate it. And I think part of the trick is to hold on to that wonder over time.
Oh, absolutely. Just speaking of that, there's a spider web outside in our front garden, and it's just fascinating. There was a bit of dewdrops on it this morning, and you can see all the intricate design and pattern, and it's just phenomenal. Thinking, wow, it's a miracle. So yeah, just enjoying even little things. This is great that I may not have noticed before, maybe.
Ask, you're describing the catharsis of writing the book and how it was an emotional process. I wonder if you could share with us how you coped with the emotions that revisiting the cancer through your book did to you.
Well, that was a real hard one because I hid my emotions in the early days, and I put on this tough face, and it's something that I even still struggle with. But it wasn't until I was actually in a group of other men, and then still I've got my tough face on. But then when I listened, to them speak, and realizing that they don't have the tough face on, they're just talking, and they're being vulnerable. And that's what really helped me realize that it's okay to talk about your feelings and to show your emotions. So that's one of the reasons why I really miss the interaction, because I made a lot of good friends and bonding, and sometimes we don't even talk about prostate cancer, and just talk about sports or whatever. But it really took the cancer to bring that side out, because otherwise, all the men I grew up with were always tough, no matter what's going on. You break your arm, it's like you don't even. It's nothing. Yeah. So just it was being with the other men and seeing them that it was okay. openly about your emotions.
Instrumental in helping you write the book because it helped you address the emotions you had as you were writing it.
Yes, it's tremendously helpful, and it allowed me to just to be more free, and that's when I decided, if I was going to write a book, I had to make sure that it wasn't censored in any way.
Because I think that many men and women too are curious about the long-term side effects that come with the various treatments, particularly sort of a sexual and urinary dysfunction that arises. That's, from, in many people, it's the very first thought they have is, what is this going to do to me?
You're so right about that. I was concerned with urinary incontinence and erectile dysfunction, big on my mind, and I talked to my surgeon in length about it. And basically, there's these erection nerves that run past the prostate, and in the old days, I think they just removed the nerves in the prostate and everything, but nowadays they do attempt to spare those nerves. However, they're not able to determine if they can do that right up front. They need to actually examine. And if those nerves appear to be invaded with cancer in any way, then they're going to come out. So I took that risk, and it just kind of, I remember waking up after my surgery in the recovery room, and you're so right about priorities, because cancer really should be the priority. But here I am, alert and I woke up in the recovery room. Doctor came to see me, asked how I was doing. My very first question to him, I didn't ask him, how did the surgery go? Was there any complications? Were you able to get all the cancer out? No, I said, did you save my erections? And that's like my only question.
Exactly.
So he laughed, of course, and said he gets that asked all the time.
Yes.
He did warn me. He said, yes, I was able to save them, but they may take months or years, or they may never work. It's quite a traumatic experience for them, and you just may never recover from it. So it's interesting that how men, not all men, but the cancer definitely should be priority.
I know I've known a variety of prostate cancer survivals, so who've had all levels of recovery and non-recovery from that kind of a surgery, or certainly radiation also can have those kinds of impacts, and certainly the hormone treatments definitely have those impacts. And my cancer is colorectal cancer, but it's in my pelvis too, so it's sort of like when it impairs you in those departments, it's like you feel half dead already. It's like, do I even want to live if I can't function in that department? And I've heard many, many men say, the loss of their functionality as sexual beings was the most devastating aspect of it to their self-esteem, to their development. And they say, yes, I'm alive, but, it's a hell of a price to pay. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to be dead? No, you can't be dead. So, any man who has any of that functionality spared, even in a little bit, is a huge mental relief to recover that function.
Yeah, totally.
In my view, treatment providers really have to make that a priority. I think increasingly now, doctors like your doctors are realizing this sexual health is an enormous quality of life issue for most people who have pelvic cancers of any kind, gynecological, colorectal, or prostate, and that really a lot more emphasis has to be placed on that kind of rehab and guidance through that rehab. So in my area, unfortunately, the one sexual health nurse retired, and they said, we don't have the funds to replace her with COVID and all the rest going on. So there's no one with that kind of expertise at all in our pension system. And that to me is a total travesty.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Quality of life is huge, and it's something that needs to be in the forefront of any treatment decision on how important things like that are to you. Maybe some men don't care, but it could be, like you say, extremely important for others. And women, right? Exactly. So quality of life, and also one thing that I noticed too is my healthcare team spent pretty much focused their entire effort on the cancer and the physical, but but spent probably zero time on emotional support, uh, which is something I didn't realize at the beginning that I would need. Um, but yeah, so it's like a whole body experience, not just not just not just a, take the cancer out, okay, you're done.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a whole emotional support that really needs to be upfront as well.
Well, not only
Um,
up front, I think it needs to continue for
and
years
continue.
afterwards. I mean,
Oh,
everybody's been through this incredibly life-changing experience. It's unique to each individual. And I always felt that I left the oncology office and boom, it's like I fell off a cliff. How do you process this? Now what? And you don't process it in 6 months. I don't think you process it in 6 years.
Yeah, you're right. I did feel a little bit like that too, abandoned. So at my doctor's office, your PSA is undetectable. Okay, off you go.
In three
kind
months.
of, yeah, that's right. It's not how are you doing emotionally. Is any anything you need. um, how, but yeah. So those are two important issues: quality of life and emotional support, definitely. Mm.
One of the things I really enjoyed about your book was how you brought in a lot of quotes. Are you a Star Trek fan?
I love
Yes,
you.
yes, absolutely. Growing up, I watched a lot of Star Trek as a kid, and
Me
William Shatner was my hero, of course. And so I didn't know. Little did I know at the time that a lot of the quotes that I on the show would help me later on in life.
A little, it's almost a little Bible.
Yeah.
For courage, isn't it? So
All find comfort and wisdom in metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. To boldly go where hardly anyone's been before.
Yeah, yeah. No, and also humor. For me, humor was a good distraction too, to help uh, ease some of the worry and kind of get my mind off of the dark side. And because I certainly was, as soon as I was diagnosed, that's immediately where I went, was the worst case scenario. And even without knowing anything about my cancer or stage, Gleason score, didn't even know there was more tests to go through. I immediately thought that was it. So it certainly was an overreaction. But that's where I could have used perhaps some emotional support
Yeah.
at the beginning.
We know that cancer is the most feared word in the English language, and that studies that show people's physical reactivity, the word cancer brings up more reactivity in humans in their adrenaline responses than any other.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pandemic, catastrophe, nuclear war.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mm.
Do you have a copy of your book there?
I do. Yes. Let's see. Here it is. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, that's great. I'll tell you that I would recommend this book to anybody going through prostate cancer, because I think that your honesty is amazing. I think the decisions you made and the agonizing that you went through, and do I have enough information? Am I making the right decisions? And you're having to do all this in real time without really any medical guidance. We've all been through this. I mean, it's up to you. You are CEO of your own health now, and you have to figure this out. And I think that you just did an extraordinary job of laying out the things that people need to look at as they go through this prostate journey in their own lives.
Thank you very much. And I also wanted to make sure that I'm not advocating one particular treatment over another. There's certainly many viable options, and it's important for men to be aware, but women to be aware of all of their options before. And also just to let you know, the ebook version of my book is free today and for the next 5 days.
Oh, wonderful. Where can people find that?
They can go to Amazon, any Amazon, and they just search for Prostate Cancer Strikes, Navigating the Storm, and you'll notice that the ebook version, they call it the Kindle version, it, 99, that'll be crossed off, and then it'll be $0. And it's somewhat confusing because they have a read for free option, but that's not it. That's some subscription service that you pay, Kindle Unlimited or something. You actually purchase it, and the price is $0. So you purchase it for $0, and then it downloads, and you can read it.
How did you persuade Amazon to do that?
Oh, they have they allow you to give your book away free every 3 months for a maximum of 5 days. But they only allow you to do that if you're not giving it away free anywhere else. So I like to give it away free as much as possible. So I thought September, Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and it's only 5 days. So the last 5 days, which is starting today.
Well, we'll be sure to get that out on social media. What is your handle on Twitter?
Just my name, Gogs Gagnon.
Okay. Any last thoughts, Robin?
Well, I like to do this with each of our authors. I ask, is there a question that you would like to be asked about your book, but you haven't been asked about it? Because many people have, book writing, as I know, is a whole other thing in terms of cancer. But authors sometimes have something they want to share, they just haven't been probed about yet.
I think I've been asked for quite a few questions over the little while, but writing is something that I would certainly recommend. Like even if people don't particularly write a book, but just journaling and just writing, I found it extremely therapeutic and helpful to get things off your mind. So I would recommend people write. I never was one for a journal writer when I was a kid, and it's something that I'm thinking, boy, it'd be kind of nice to read some of my journals when I was a kid. So
yes, and also, I think that your journaling really did add to the precision of your book in the sense that you could describe in a lot of detail things that people would forget about after a number of years.
Right.
Very precise accounting of the sequencing of some of the things that you went through, and so that the vividness of that is conveyed by the detail, and the detail is what you had on because you did the journaling.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it. One last look at your book, if you would, so everyone has a good visual on that. And we'll push out on Twitter and through our social media that this is available for free on Amazon, and hopefully it will touch many people and help them with their own path through prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I had an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy to be able to help raise awareness of prostate cancer.
And just finally, I know that you've been sort of supporting other cancer-related authors through your initiatives. If there's you have other folks that you're in touch with who would like to be have their book profiled on Cancer Book Club, please encourage them to be in touch with us. We'd love to.
I will definitely do that. I will definitely let them know.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.